Welcome to the world of 3D. All right, so I'm going to start pretty much exactly how I started last week. You guys are going to be a little bit bored, but it still reinforces. You probably need a little reinforcement on it since you didn't watch the video. Okay, so basics of 3D is using curves. So my favorite curve tool to use is this one here called Interpolate Points. Okay, it's the second one over, and the way that you get to it is by hovering over the icon, left clicking, holding it, dragging over to the second choice, letting it go. And the way you know that it was turned on is Rhino talks to you with the command line, and it's asking you, where do you want to start this curve? Okay, so and you see it turns into a plus sign, and now it's ready to start making curves. So I'm just going to start clicking by the left clicking and dragging, left clicking and dragging, and every time I left click, it makes a control point here. This type of curve, this interpolate curve, acts almost similar to Illustrator, which is by Adobe. And what it does is as you're moving, you see it has like a bend to it, like it's a little bit like bendy. It's really great for like going and doing some tracing of some objects. You get a nice organic feel for it. Okay, and again, the basics is we're going to build things using curves. So one of the things you just saw I did is I completed the curve and I closed it. This is one single curve with no openings. If you have an opening, you're going to have issues with your 3D model. There will be defects, okay? Let's talk about the windows real quick here. We have a 4-port view here. This is called your perspective here, okay? That's your perspective. This is the top view here. I'm hovering over it, the top view right over here. Front view and right, okay? And the way you drill down, it's either single click or double click. Now I have mine set to single click, single left click to go. If you didn't set it up, it's going to be a double left click. So there's settings that we're going to do, and we're going to walk through all these different settings throughout the class and the shortcuts, because the way we like to model is using shortcuts. Okay, so every model starts with curves in Rhino. Okay. One of the rules I have is your left hand is always on the keyboard because we're always using shortcuts, and we don't want your hand on your lap, holding a drink, smoking a cigarette. Don't do those things. Keep your hand on the keyboard.
There's a shift?
Okay, well, usually shift, because the reason why shift is the most common one, and I use my, what finger is this? Wedding finger, ring finger. So I usually keep the ring finger on the shift button, and that allows me to pan. So when I shift right click, I'm able to pan. Okay, shift right clicking pans. Okay, right clicking in perspective rotates. Right clicking in perspective without holding the shift down rotates. Right click with the shift down pans. Okay. Now, when I select an item, it's going to get highlighted yellow. So as you notice, it's currently a black curve. And if I select it, it's going to be yellow. Okay, that indicated selected. Okay. One of the ways you select is you're going to left click and drag and make a box. Maybe you can't see it, but there's a box being made right now. Can you guys see that? There's a box. I'm left clicking, dragging, and I let go. And it's selecting. So if there was a bunch of curves in there, it would select everything inside the box. Okay? That makes your life very easy. All right, another really great one, and just pay attention to this for right now. There's a tiny icon here called Zoom Selected. Okay? It's an magnifying lens with 2 little yellow dots in it. Magnifying lens with 2 yellow dots is called Zoom Selected. Okay? Very important. This is a very useful command, and in fact it took me probably 10 years to discover it, what it does and how it helped me with my modeling. So what happens is, as you're like start modeling, you kind of get into a zone where you're lost in space, like you're like, oh man, I'm like zooming all around, I can't see where I'm at. When you double click on that with a left click, double left click, it brings it right into the center, and you're able to rotate right from the middle of it. And that's very useful, especially when you start to do other curves. So I'm going to draw a few more curves here. Okay, now I went to clicking the 4-point view over here, which is the 4 viewpoint perspective right here. This icon's 4 little boxes, but you can just, again, click on the name. So if I'm in perspective, I go back and I click on perspective, I'm back into the 4-point view. Okay, so let me draw a couple more curves here. I'm going to left click and hold, drag over the second icon. Oh, by the way, just a few things. I'm not going to be teaching you all the commands, so don't worry. There's only a few commands that you're going to learn today, and these are the few of the most important commands that you're going to use all the time. And I don't use all the commands to make my models and my art. It's actually very few commands that I need to use. Okay, so just don't get worried if you start to feel like, oh my God, he's showing me so many commands. It's really not. There's only a few. We'll go over it, and by the end of the day, you'll realize it's really easy. Okay, so I'm here. I'm going to make a few more curves, and I'm just making whatever. Okay, click, 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 click. Now you see it's talking to me here. So when I get close to that point, you see I'm moving close. Watch what it says. Okay, point, or it'll say end. And that means that I've connected it now. When I left click, it's now done. It's connected curve, okay? Now this is what makes 3D special compared to using Illustrator or any kind of two-dimensional drawing package. All right, I'm selecting the curve. Okay, now this is a new command you're going to learn here, okay? The shortcut is Control-E, all right? But we have to set those up. That's my shortcut, Control-E. The long way is I'm going to go under the menu, and over here it says Surface. I click on Surface. I come down to Extrude Curve. Now I have several options. We're going to go straight. Extrude Curve Straight. Left click on that, and as you can see, it's making that curve into a surface and extruding it 2 directions, okay? We don't want 2 directions, okay? We're going to come up here, and you see, remember I told you the command line is talking to you right over here? So right here, you see the command line here? It's asking me, do I want both sides extrusion? No. So we only want one direction. You see that? It's going one direction now, and it's extruding one direction. I'm going to leave solid as no right now, because I'm going to show you the steps here. Now, the next thing is, each one of these little boxes, if you zoom in, you have a big box, which is 10 millimeters. But each little small box is 1 millimeter. These are 1 millimeter. So I have it set for millimeters. You could do inches, you can do feet, you could do whatever. But in jewelry, we work in millimeters. So instead of like eyeballing how big it is and guessing where 2 millimeters is, I'm going to enter 2, hit enter. That's now 2 millimeters. Okay. So this is now what we call a surface. And a 3D is building objects through surfaces. These are considered like the side of the walls with the top missing. Once I put a top and a bottom and it's watertight, that's a solid. Okay? And we can do that by hitting Control-C. And now it's capped. Now it's a solid object. Okay? Now this solid object is 3D printable. Believe it or not, this weird looking design, and it could be a cool pendant, who knows, you know, like I put a little veil over here, or I turn it this way, I put a necklace, you know.
It looks like a shoe from Holland.
It could be a little shoe from Holland. Oh yeah, I see it, I see that, yeah, the shoe from Holland, okay. So basically it's a solid now, okay. So we have curve, we start with a curve. We are going to do a surface. Oops. I locked it. All right, so there you go. So here you go. This is now the 3 basics of how you build a 3D model in Rhino. Curve, surfaces, solids. And yeah, so that's the basics of it. So now let me jump right into it. I'm going to pull up the Starbucks logo, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the perspective. Again, it could be a double click or a single click depending on our settings. I'm going to select everything on the screen, and I do Control X for delete. Okay, Control X for delete. It's not cut, it's delete. Control X for delete. That's your next shortcut that you are going to use a lot. Okay, so again, this is millimeters, and say your client or customer comes in and says, I want this to be 2 inches big, Starbucks logo medallion. Okay. So the way I do it is I first make a reference for myself. I mean, I can sit there and count the squares, but it's a little hard to see. So I'll go in and let me just go over here real quick and show you something real fast. It's something called layers. Are you guys familiar with Photoshop layers at all?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, so we have layers. It acts sort of similarly where you have different layers that you can build on. One of the cool things is you can change the color of the layer. So I have a layer that's like an aqua green. This helps me see what I'm doing a little bit better than the black, especially when you start working with a lot of different things. You need a little bit for it to stand out. So I'm going to go into this next icon over here. It's a rectangle. Okay, it's a curved rectangle. This makes just a box. All right, I'm going to left click on that. And Rhino is asking me, what do I want to do? Where's the first corner? I'm going to start from the center. Okay, so now this box is going to expand out from the center. Okay, but I can click it here and expand out from the center. Okay, what I want to do is I want to be in the middle of the entire world, the center of the universe. So the center of the universe in 3D is 0, 0, 0. Okay, because we're in 3 dimensions, X, Y, and Z. 0 coordinates for all 3 is the center of the world. Okay, we're going to hit return, and now we're in the center of the world. As you can see, we're right in the middle. Okay, so we said 2 inches is about 50 millimeters. Okay, so we're going to type in 50, enter, 50, enter. And now we have a 50 by 50 square curve reference. So now I know exactly what's 2 inches. This is 2 inches, you know, it's 50 millimeters to perfection. To perfection. So when you 3D print, you should get 50 millimeters from your 3D printing. Okay, there is some tolerances, but that we'll get into later. All right, so next. This is really cool. This is how you pull in a reference. So say you make a drawing or you have something off the internet. This is a very important thing to pick up on. Okay, we're gonna go to this. If you look at it very closely, it's a blue plane with 4 dots. Okay, we're gonna click and hold that down, and it opens up another menu. And under that menu, you see this multicolored plane. Okay, this multicolored plane. It looks like a rainbow. We want that. That is called picture frame. Okay, I'm going to click on that, and now it's asking me to choose what I want to import. All right, I have it on the desktop. That was Lisa's. Where we got there we go, Starbucks. Okay, so I'm going to click on that. All right. Right now it's asking me where do I want to start the first corner. I'll start right there. Shift and hold it down. Left click again, and here's the icon. All right, so it's now oriented incorrectly. Let's first rotate it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the background. So you're going to see it selected by seeing a yellow around the border. Do you see the yellow? So if I unclick it, you don't see the yellow. Now when I select it, you see the yellow border around the picture frame. Okay, that's how you know it's been selected. We're going to go under transform. Now my shortcut for rotation is F2. Okay, F2 for rotate. F2 for rotate. In the menu, it's under the transform. Click on transform. I scroll down to rotate. Let it go. It's asking me for where is the center of my rotation. Well, let's concentrate on Miss Starbucks over here. Okay, I'm going to left click again. And then it's asking me for the angle. So I just pull out. I hold the shift down, and then it locks it on the x-axis. And then I hit left again, left click again, and now I can rotate this whole object from that point that I clicked on. And then what I do is I always use shift to lock it to the y-axis. left click, and there I go. All right, so now we have it. But we don't need all those other logos, right? We don't need the other logos, so let's get rid of them. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use the same box, and I'm gonna, instead of starting from the center, I'm just gonna use from one corner to the next. So left click, drag onto another corner. Left click. Can you take your phone off because it's shaking the?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I don't even know what's on.
Yeah, it's like buzzing. Yeah, thanks. Cool, thank you. All right, so all right, so now we have this box drawn around the picture frame of the Starbucks logo. All right, make sure you're selecting, and sometimes what I do is I go off the object and I double click in the blank space just to clear everything out. Or a lot of times you'll see me hit like escape button a lot. I escape that, and that kind of zeroes everything out, make sure I'm not on some command or whatever. So I hit escape, or I double click outside to make sure I don't have anything selected. Now I'm going back and I'm selecting, and you can tell by the yellow border around the picture frame. Okay, and I'm going to use this new command called split. This is another command you're going to use a lot, the split command. Okay, I'm going to click on the split. It looks like a little wedge going into a rectangular box. It looks like a little wedge going into a rectangular box. Again, don't worry, I'm gonna walk around, guys, and I'm gonna help you out. Okay. All right. So I'm clicking on it, and now it's asking me for the cutter. The cutter is the box that we made around the design. Okay. Let me know when you guys are ready. Okay. Watch. Take a look. I'm gonna click, and now I selected the cutter, and you can select more than one cutter. So say there was another cutter, I could select that one, I could select that one, but we only needed that one cutter. So now to end the command, you either hit return or enter, or right click. Right click is enter. It just does the same thing as enter. So let's hit enter, okay? And now we cut it. Now what we're gonna do is select the part that we don't want by left clicking on it, and Control X is delete, or you can just hit backspace and it deletes it. Okay? Now let's move the drawing over. We don't need this box anymore, right? So we can just delete that. So Control X is my delete, or again backspace. And I'm gonna center it by eyeballing it, bringing it all the way to the top around there. Okay. And now the next command we're gonna do is transform scale two-dimensionally. Okay, so this is going to expand the drawing two-dimensionally here. Okay, I'm going to left click on it. It's asking me where am I going to starting point for scaling. I'm going to start at the top of the circle. Then I'm going to hit Shift to give it a straight line, and I'm going to go to the, approximately the bottom of the circle. I can't really see it, but you kind of eyeball it. All right, and now I drag down to approximately the bottom where I want it to stop. Okay? Left click. There you go. So now we know that that is approximately 50 millimeters, up and down, right and left. I mean, I can finagle it and like get it exact, and there's like, depending on the level of precision that you need. I find that most of the time you don't need 100% precision. You just need, a good accuracy. Precision is for watchmaking and things like that. Okay, so next, if I now like click on it, it moves it, right? So that's going to be very hard to trace. So let me undo that, get it back into the position, and I'm going to lock it. So the way I lock it is there's a little lock icon over here on the top, or my shortcut is Control W. As you can see, shortcuts is the name of the game. When you start modeling, you don't want to be constantly clicking on these icons, clicking on the menu. You're wasting time. You want to be a really good modeler, hand on the computer, and you're using shortcuts. Okay? So Control W is the shortcut. All right. So now I'm going to escape that. I'm going to show you now. Just clicking on the icon does the same thing. So here I'm selecting the background. I click on the icon, and now it's locked. Now you can see I can't draw on it. See? I can't move it anymore. I can move the square because I didn't select the curve. I only selected the background. We don't need that square anymore, so let's just delete that and get that out of the way. All right, here we are, Starbucks time. All right, I don't know why I did that. Okay, zoom in. All right, here we go. Now what we're going to do, the green is not going to stand out against the green. So what's a good color for me to draw on? And
Black.
you think black?
Red.
Yeah.
Do a red.
Yeah. Red is good.
All right, hideous red. Sounds good. And sometimes the uglier the color, the more it stands out. It's great. Okay, interpolate curves, again, is left click, drag over to the second one, let it go. Now you have it. Now I want to show you something what I have. I make a pop-up menu by using my middle mouse button. So here the middle mouse button, pop up, and there it is. So I have all my, these are all the commands that I pretty much use in the entire software program, all in this one little palette. And the center one is the zoom selected. So every time I hit the middle mouse button, it's pretty much zoom selected is right there, because that's the #1 command I use is zoom selected. Okay, so interpolate curves, left click on it, and now it's asking me where am I starting. I'm going to start right over here. Just pick a spot and just start left clicking and dragging and start like eyeballing. You don't need to be super exact here. Let's just kind of get a good feel and start drawing this curve, okay? Now when we get to some place that it starts to act weird, where it like bends it too much, what I do is I right click to end the command, and then I right click to restart the command, and then I snap left click, and you see it comes out straight and it doesn't bend anymore. So that helps you in certain corners. Now the way I'll handle this is then I'll just start to left click again and just continue modeling, okay, by making these curves. So I'll keep going and when I get to like a sharp curve corner here, I will right click to stop to see the command stopped, right click to restart the command, snap, left click, and then start clicking away. And I'm just going to keep on going until I trace out everything that you see. Okay, one more time, right click to start. Now you see I must snap and left click. If you leave a gap, and I'm going to show you what I mean, if I leave a gap and I start here, okay, when you zoom out sometimes it's hard to see it. Okay, sometimes it's hard to see that you missed a spot. But if this spot is open, that's going to be open extrusion and you're going to have a hole. So we must fill that hole. So I'm going to right click, snap. Oops. Now you see I made a mistake. I'm going to zoom in so you can see the mistake. I overlapped and I didn't snap at the end. Okay, that's a problem. So I'm going to escape that because that's not a good spot to snap to. Right click, snap to the end. Click one more time, snap, and close. When you zoom in, we should be good. Yep, nice and good. All right, so what do we have here is our first section. And what I do is after I make the curves, I left click drag over it, and I'm going to hit this puzzle piece here, and that's called join. That's another very important command that you're going to use all the time, join. So left click on join. And now this joined 5 curves into one closed curve. So now this is one closed curve here, okay? I'll do the crown next. So middle mouse button for myself is very helpful, or go back to where I was showing you, which is the curves command, left click and hold, drag to the second one, left click again, and begin making your curves. Now this is actually going to take me a while to make because this has got a lot of curves, and I don't know if you guys want to watch me keep clicking away over here. All right, so I'm going to put a pause on this Starbucks drawing, and I'm going to open up the Rhino the Panda that we did last week because I have that already completed, and I'll show you what the next steps are. Okay, so just give me a second here. Let me just minimize. And I'll double click on this. Oops, no, this. Let's see, Rhino 4. So Rhino 5. Open with Rhino 5. Okay, here we go. Just give it a second, guys.
They're gonna be tracing pandas.
Yeah, I'm gonna set them up so they can trace afterwards. Okay, here we go. All right. Let's just delete this. Where's the curves? There we go. Okay. All right. So pretend that I traced out all the curves for the Starbucks logo. Okay. So we have our panda here. Okay. Now this is where the magic begins. We have well, these curves are not closed. See, when I select one, you see that it's not continuously selecting and it hasn't opened. So that means it hasn't been joined yet. So again, I can go one at a time like this, choosing it and then hitting join. And it's saying 2 curves joined to 1 open curve. We don't want open curve, we want closed curve. So I'm going to keep going. So I can keep going like that, or I can just select all of it and hit join. And it definitely closed this right here by doing that. All right. So that's a little shortcut. Instead of going one at a time, just select everything and join it. Okay, so now we had the extrude surface command. So we go under surface, you select the curve, go under surface, go down to extrude curve straight. Okay, and we're going to extrude curve straight. And right now it's going which direction, guys? Both sides. We don't want it. We want one side, so we're going to turn that off. Okay, let's go back to, let's say 1 millimeter. Okay, we have 1 millimeter. And it didn't cap it. So we're going to select the surface, Control C, and now that caps it. But the chin, if you see, the chin didn't get cut out. It's there. All right, so how do we cut out the chin? All right, so guys, pay attention over here because this is different from last week. I'm going to show you something new. Okay, I'm going to go to wireframe mode. And I'm going to now choose that curve that didn't get cut out. Okay, I'm going to switch back to now shaded mode. And I'm going to extrude curve. Now this time I am going to choose both sides. Okay, I'm going to choose both sides and I'm going to make it a little bit bigger than the object that I want to cut away from. I'm going to select it and cap it. Okay. And now what I do, here's a new command, it's a Boolean Difference. This is just a fancy term to say subtract. So I'm going to choose what I want to keep, which is this big object. And I'm going to go to these little balls over here, click and hold it down, and select Boolean Difference, which is the second option. Now it's asking me what am I going to subtract from, which am I going to cut from. So I'm going to choose that object, right click, and it kept it. Okay, so I just delete it, and then there's the hole. There's an option in the command line, so let me go back. All right, I'm going to go back. I'm going to do it again. So I'm going to show you a little difference. This way I got to read the command line. If you want this to disappear right away, sometimes you want to keep it for saving the cutters. Sometimes I save the cutters for a future, but sometimes you don't need it after you cut out the object. So say you don't need it and you know it. Where's the? Right there. I select it, go on to the Boolean commands, choose the second one, which is Boolean Difference, and it's asking delete input. You're going to choose yes, delete the input. Here's the input. This is the thing we're using to subtract it from. Now it disappeared. Okay? Now I can choose the other the other 3 curves, the eyeball, the nose, and hit extrude curve by hitting Control E, or as I told you guys, you go under surface, scroll down to extrude curve straight. You're noticing we're starting to repeat commands? It starts to become very repetitive. Okay? Again, now what is it doing right now? Both sides, right? What do I have to do?
You have to.
Hakeem, what do I have to do to get it to go one direction? Click on both sides off. So both sides no. Okay? And then it's one side extrusion. We did 1 millimeter. Okay? And This time I didn't choose close the caps, so I'm going to choose the objects, Control C to cap them. And now this is solid objects. Okay? Now we have our first logo. Okay? Now, we were discussing last week that this is, you can 3D print this, but what's going to happen is it has, these eyes are not attached to anything, so these will like, you know, float away. So we'll work on like design techniques that you can still make this into a pendant if you wanted to. We would just have something that connects everything, or a surface that it lays on top of and we're extruding off of that. But we'll get into that in a later date.
Like maybe a bar or something behind it, or
Whatever it is, you're the designer. I'm just teaching you the tools. Okay, so guys, I want you now to pay attention again from last week. We're gonna now go into what I hope you guys are gonna do today is a little ZBrush. Okay, Bruce. One of the things I want you to understand is that we don't use one software package. It's a workflow between software packages in order to achieve the design that you're looking for. And it really comes down to what is the final product and what are you trying to do, and then that's how you kind of troubleshoot how you're going to build it out. So this is just going to be a quick intro into another software package called ZBrush. Okay. Now the way we work in transferring the models from one software package to the next, we're going to use a file format called OBJ. OBJ. It's almost like object. Okay, OBJ. So you're gonna choose your solid objects here. You're gonna hit File, Export Selected. Okay, I have the object selected and I'm exporting the selected. And on the bottom here, I'm going to choose the format OBJ. See right here, OBJ. I'm gonna left click on that. I'm just going to put this on the desktop, and I'm going to call it Trenton Panda, and I'm going to hit enter. And for right now, don't worry about these settings, just use the default settings are fine. I never really had, in my entire career, I never really messed around with these settings. So just use the default settings, hit OK. It's polygons I do mess around with. I can move this slider, but we don't need like that many, and we don't need that little. So just leave it as default. Hit OK. All right, beautiful. We're done. So now we're going to switch programs. So we're going to minimize. Sorry, I have a hard time seeing from here. All right, there we go. Let's minimize this. Minimize that. Okay. We're going to launch ZBrush. Now the first thing you got to do is you got to let it launch. You know, once you get it started, you see it's working. Don't touch anything until it fully loads. So let's just give it a second, and it loads pretty quick.
Where did you save that file to? Desktop?
Just a desktop, yeah. I called it Trenton Panda.
And are we working Rhino 5?
Yeah, and so that was another thing I was talking about. You don't need the latest. The latest is not always the greatest. I got to a certain point that the technology got to a certain point that it's doing everything I needed to do. And to save yourself money, you know, you could buy yourself a $350 laptop and just use the older versions of the software. And if it worked back then, why wouldn't it work? Of course it's going to work now. So you can save yourself a ton of money and be able to make these models with no issues. I don't see. Sure, you may not be able to use Rhino 6, but I don't use Rhino 6, and I don't feel like I need to upgrade. I can do whatever I want. So it's asking me about the last session. Okay, so first thing you're gonna hit, you're gonna see this menu screen comes up. It's comma. You hit the comma button first. Comma button first. Second thing you're gonna do, and 3D modeling is very specific. You have to follow the instructions to the T. You're going to come over to the star icon over here called Polymesh 3D. You're going to left click. And what that did is it opened up the menu over here. That menu just appeared by left clicking. Polymesh 3D, just star, just left click on the star. Left click on the star. Okay? you're going to come all the way down to the word import. Don't use the one on top. You got to use the one down here. Okay, you guys see my finger? And I have the
You should right click on that.
you're going to left click on the star. We're left clicking on import. Okay. The first thing we're going to click on is MRG. It's a button meaning merge points. So you're going to left click on that, and you know you've left clicked on it when it turns orange. Then there's two sliders. Try to quad. You're going to slide it all the way over to the max, 90, and weld. So you're welding the model all the way to the end, 0.01. You're going to hit import. And now it's asking me which model. So I'm going to the desktop, Trenton Panda, selecting the model and hitting open. Now you know it's loaded. How do I know it's loaded? You can see a little preview on the left hand side over here. You see the preview? Okay. Next thing you're going to do, left click and drag on the screen. Left click, drag on the screen, let go. Next thing you're going to do is you're going to hit the letter T, which means transform. You're turning on the transform command. And F for centering. TF. Okay. Now this model is you can mess around with it. You can see, but you see it's ugly. We have to convert this mesh and clean it up. Okay. And what we're going to do is something called Dynamesh. It's like dynamite. It's amazing. I love it. And what it does is like it puts a skin on top of this, a brand new mesh. Okay, so I go over here to the left-hand side and under Geometry, I click on Dynamesh. And it opens up a little window here and has the resolution, okay? We're going to slide the resolution to around 400. You know, you don't want to go too big because then it becomes millions of polygons and then it really slows down your computer. 400 is enough. I generally think 400 is good enough. Then you see the button Dynamesh, you click on it. You know it's working because up here it says projection in process, and then it will start going all the way across, and now you know it's done. Okay. Now when I draw on it, you see it's much smoother and nicer. Okay. Right now I just wanted to show you how amazing that is. I just drew on top of this surface, you know, wherever I want. I can soften this here. I can go and like start sculpting this like it's clay. So it's like you have the best of both worlds. I'm going from like precision to like, you know, handmade. Let me switch brushes. I'll go to the move brush. Where's the move brush? Move here, move brush. I can grab the end here and I can move it around. I can pull things here and spend a lot of time, you know, zooming in and I want to move this over here. You know, get really detailed. Make the brush smaller. You know, I'm going to pull that here, and start making like little details that if I was to try to do this in Rhino, hey, it'd be almost impossible to do this in Rhino, okay? So, let me back out a little bit here. All right, so I'm just going to do a couple of little adjustments here to kind of give you an idea of what is possible. This software has, again, very few commands. It's very few commands. I can show you the basic commands, but what it comes down to is your artistic ability. It's your patience and time and attention to detail. And like, you know, as a sculptor, somebody can show you how to use the tools, but everybody's taste and style is different. That's what's amazing about this. That's what's so cool about ZBrush. And this is what you're going to take a long time. It took me years to get to know ZBrush. Okay, but don't get frustrated. I'm going to show you some quick, dirty basics, and you'll be messing around with this in no time. All right, let me just show, I guess, Claybuildup. So we have the Claybuildup command here. That's a brush, and then you can kind of like, you know, I don't know, I'm just drawing whatever on top of it. This client wants it to look like, I don't know, big knots of hair. And I'm like, that's ugly, but they tell me to do it, and I'm like, okay, that'll be $1,000. And then they're like, okay, and I'm like, all right, I'll do it. So here I'm just kind of drawing like whatever it can be.
Look nice on my trees.
But you see how fast I'm modeling with this? It is like, man, when this thing came out and we figured out that we can use both these packages together, we were blown away. I mean, that moment was like, what? And that's how I got like, you know, hired by these big firms because nobody knew how to do this. You know, we kind of invented it, you know, we were pretty early into this 3D modeling business. And what we were doing was not really being done before. And, you know, these companies needed this kind of work. So you see how I zoomed in? I mean, made the brush size smaller. I'll zoom in here. Make the brush size smaller. And I'm able to put like details here. Now, just so you know, we can subdivide these polygons. So if I hit Control D, you see it gets smoother. And then if I start to... But it adds polygons. So we went from, I'll just tell you right now, we went from, where's my polygon count? Okay, 218,000 points, okay? If I subdivide it, we're now at 877,000 points. So what happens is you get more detail, but then the file size becomes much larger. And at a certain point, your computer processor can't handle it. Okay, we don't want to go more than like 1 million points. And while working, okay? So I'm going to undo that and just do some quick little more wiggles here. A couple other things you can do is if you hit Shift and drag, it's smoothing. So you see I'm smoothing everything out. See that? So you can adjust the intensity of those things. You know, I hit the space bar and you have all these intensities. But again, I'm just showing you the basics right now. I just want you to kind of get in and out of this software and just do the Dynamesh. Is the most important thing I want you to remember. And then I'll show you a couple of brushes that you guys can play around with. All right, so now the next thing we're gonna do is, and this is what makes this awesome, we're gonna export from here, okay? I click on export. I'm sorry, I used the one up here. Click on export on the top. I'm gonna keep it the same name, but I usually label it Z at the end, meaning out of ZBrush. Or you can write down out of ZBrush or out of Z. But I just put Z and then I know it's out of ZBrush. Same thing, OBJ format, same thing in the desktop, just click save, okay? All right, so you saw the orange line go across the top, that means that it's done. And I'm gonna now close the software package because I don't wanna waste memory. And go back into Rhino. Okay, I'm gonna just delete the originals, poly surfaces. And now I'm going to import the panda from ZBrush. Clicking OK. And as you can see, it brought in all the detail. It's all there. I'm going to go into a shaded render view, and now you can see it.
Wow.
Okay, so it's all there. And here's one thing that's amazing. In ZBrush, I can't tell what the size of the object is. Here we know it's exactly 50 millimeters. Okay, why is that important? Well, I call Rhino the father of the 3D modeling because it gives me my measurements. And whenever you're doing any kind of project, measurements are super important. Finger sizes for jewelry, stone measurements, but sizing is important. So I get my basic sizes. We started, remember, I made that reference square. And that gave them a basic reference. And I can go in and out and know comfortably that this will 3D print at 50 millimeters because Rhino is my safety net, okay? And I think that's a good overview for today's class, guys. All right, I don't want to get too much further into it because we need to now have everybody try to start handling the software. Is that fair, guys? Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm going to turn off the recording and you guys are welcome to ask me questions. All right, so just give me 1 second to shut it down.